so this is Lizzie from Love From Lizi with the Love From Lizi September 17 10 cards 1 super kit video. This is similar to all my 10 cards 1 kit videos in that you're going to see my processes and my cards sped up to about 3 minutes a card. What's different is that it's a super kit because it's the Love From Lizi's birthday, first birthday now, and I put together a bigger kit, and so I make 12 cards. So I'm raging through them here. And what you've seen me do so far is fold a piece of cardstock and cut it in half to make the base. I've trimmed a piece of lace to be very slightly larger, and then I've cut a piece of patterned paper to be smaller still. I've die cut a green circle of the specialty cardstock and die cut a peacock from the silver mirror card, which is from my stash. I'm using double-sided sellotape here in the centre of the card blank, and I'm just working my way around the edge, trimming the lace. It's not the easiest thing to do, so you do have to hold it quite firmly because I didn't want it stuck all the way to the edge because it's nice to have a little bit of movement on the front of the card. And then I'm using some double-sided foam tape just to raise that patterned panel from the front, and a little bit more behind the peacock and die cut circle. I will list all the things that I use beyond the kit in a blog post. Here I'm just using some of the glittered peel-offs which are in the kit this month. They're my new line being glittered. And then I remove the double-sided tape and pop the peacock in the middle. I did go back and pop some of the Nuvo drops in the eye of the peacock and in each of the corners. You'll see that in the still shots at the end. So here's card 2. So this is a craft card base, and I'm inking up the little flower from the stamp set with Versamark, which also came in the kit. And there's no sort of rhyme or reason to how I'm doing this. I'm just making sure I twist the flower each time so that I don't have two that are sat next to each other or in the same orientation. And I'm just working my way across the whole card base. Now I super speed this up here so that you can see the whole process in case you're wanting to mimic it, but there really isn't a rule to it. It's just keep twisting and make sure you leave a little bit of a gap, and also run off the edges. Like here I'm just going back now along all the edges to make sure that there are little bits where there's been hang-offs because it makes it look a bit more organic. Here I'm coming in with my Nuvo fine tip glue. The good thing about the Nuvo glue is it dries tacky, so it's perfect for what I want to do with this. So I went across all of the centres of the flowers and along those swirls, if we can call them that, just on the larger of the two. And then here over a coffee filter, just to try and contain the mess somewhat, I've just pulled a few of the gilding flakes out of the bag. Now a very little of that stuff goes a very long way, so you don't need to dump the whole bag out. I mean, you can if you love a mess, fill your boots, but I'm more of a try to keep it contained kind of girl. So all I've done is I've sort of laid it on the front, and then I'm just rubbing it with my finger, and then after it feels like the stickiness has gone from the glue because it's absorbed all of the flakes, I'm using a brush just to sort of push it over, and I go the whole way around the card base doing that. And here I've just got one of the little Hessian hearts or canvas hearts, and I'm threading some of that silver twine through, which is a little bit naughty, that twine. It wants to fray quite badly, so be aware when you're handling it. It looks ever so pretty wrapped, but when you cut it, it does want to fray. So, and here I'm just using a couple of the foam, just some foam adhesive, just to put that at the top, and I've left that sentiment free as well so that I can put it on the inside. Here's card 3, and I'm using an a mint base here, and this is the dark blue specialty cardstock that came in the kit, and all I do here is just mark it with a pencil, and I've got this little trimmer. I must have had this trimmer for about 15 years. It's broken, that's why it's got a lolly stick and washi tape holding it together, but it's fantastic. It's my favourite, so I won't get rid of it. Okay, and here I'm just trimming another piece of patterned paper now, having just held my pencil up to the sort of size that I like, and I'm using a circle die. And I'm drawing around the circle that I've cut so that I can cut a hole. And I'm just going around the outside of that pencil line because I want the card base to be exposed. And I've die cut a peacock out of the dark green specialty cardstock from the kit. And here I'm just laying some double-sided tape all over the back of the peacock. And here I paper piece in using the blue specialty cardstock and also some silver mirror. So I have to die cut the peacock from the blue, and then I also do it from the silver. And it is quite a fiddly little job. However, I think the outcome is amazing. I think it looks lovely. So it's got to be someone that you really like that you're going to make this card for. But yes, this little picker from Sizzix did me the world of good. Anyway, I'm back here now onto the card front, the card panel, and I've used my embossing powder tool, and I'm using Nevertheless She Persisted. This is the embossing powder that came in the kit, and I've heat set that, and now I'm just putting some double-sided tape onto the back of that card panel, removing it all off, and I will stick that flush onto the card front. Now that hole looks really messy, but don't be put off by that because it will be hidden. So that's now down. I'm just trying to get rid of some of that powder. And here I've just picked up a piece of acetate from my stash. I've just cut roughly a piece that is larger than the circle I've cut, but smaller than the piece of pattern paper. Using some double-sided tape around the opening of the aperture, and stick the acetate down. And then here I just get some foam tape, fold it in half, and I find that if I cut this particular width foam tape into 3 strips, it bends quite nicely. If it's too wide, they don't like to curve, so I do this rather than having lots of smaller pieces, because the more small pieces there are, the more likely it is there's going to be some adhesive that you miss, and then your sequins will all stick. So if you're able to use a foam tape, I would recommend it, particularly for circular ones. And then I use my anti-static powder just around the inside there to make sure that any extra stick was removed. Poured some sequins on the card front, and then took all the backing off and laid my shaker cover down. Now I just took some of the double-sided tape off the back of the peacock, laid that down, and then I popped a little square of foam tape under the tail of the peacock. I'm here using my glitter peel-offs just to run a small border around the edge, and this is Glossy Accents that I've just popped into a precision tip bottle so that I can manage it better. And I've just picked 3 of the little stars out of this shaker mix and just popped those after Nevertheless She Persisted. And so that's the end of card 3, and here's card 4. This is quite comparable actually to some of the wedding stationery I used to make. It's a very clean and simple, but it's the use of matting and layering to really give the card some pop. So here I've just taken some of the white cardstock and put anti-static powder all over it and stamped in the Versamark This Girl Can using the embossing powder from the kit. And I'm just showing you there how shiny it is. This is, I know it's mine, and you know, you shouldn't really brag, but it is gorgeous, this stuff. I absolutely love it, and I'm really looking forward to what you guys all think about it. If you can let me know, I would really appreciate it. Okay, so anyway, I've gone and got a piece of the green specialty cardstock and used my pencil and ruler and done as I do. And then I've gone and got the slate grey specialty as well, and I've done the same with that. I've just trimmed little pieces, and here I've laced one of the buckles from the kit onto the wide piece of ribbon, and I just threaded it through and then made sure that the folds looked nice. I popped a little bit of double-sided tape behind the buckle so that I could have it sit where I wanted to, and then using the grid lines on my craft mat, I made sure the ribbon was even at either side. Now this velvet ribbon is really pretty, but it's very thick and it wouldn't have gone through the buckle, so I'm doing a bit of a cheat here. I've just stuck some double-sided tape onto 2 little strips, and I just sort of encourage it into the folds, up as far up to the buckle as possible, and you wouldn't know that it hadn't gone through. So I do that on both sides, and then fold the tails around the back, and then using some double-sided foam, I mount that onto the grey panel. And now with a lot of foam tape and sellotape, I mount all my layers up. So this Girl Can panel went flush onto the green went on foam tape onto the white, and the white onto the grey with double-sided tape, and then the grey onto the card front with double-sided tape as well. So there's an awful lot of layers in this card, and it's got a really nice weight to it. I love it when you get a really good weighted card, because you know it will stand the test of time. So this is ever so simple. It's just enjoying the specialty card. So now we're on to card 5, and this is the stickers. And all I did here, I can't even call it basic colouring. This is like child colouring. There was no blending. I just used my Copic markers as flat colours. I picked out a handful that matched with the pattern paper that I wanted to use. Again, I'll list these all on my blog. And then I'm using a white card base. These are all top fold cards. I do turn the orientation of one, but all of them beyond that are top folding. So anyway, I've cut some of the specialty blue cardstock again to be slightly smaller than my card base. And here I've got some of the patterned paper. Now, I really like this, and this pattern paper reminded me of a children's book, which had a little fish that gave out all its lovely silver scales. And so all I've done is, with my medium Nuvo glue pen, just sort of gone over some of those lines, if you like, those strokes, not with any regularity or pattern. I've tried to be as random as possible, and that often doesn't come naturally to me. I like straight lines and things to be very proper. So yeah, and I'm just using the same technique as I did with the second card, which is letting the glue dry. It does have to go dry so that it becomes tacky, and then popping some flakes over the top of all the glue, rubbing it with my finger, and then giving it a good burnish with the brush. And here I have die cut a circle with the dark grey, popped the sticker onto that, and here I've cut a little piece of the ribbon, velvet ribbon, in the lighter of the two greys, using my grid mat to make sure that it's nice and straight across the back. And then I use some double-sided sellotape. Now, because this is going straight onto the navy, normally I would like to use foam tape because of the ribbon, because of any bulk, but I wanted this card to try to be as flat as possible so that it could be one that went into the post. So I've used double-sided tape also onto the blue specialty to mount it straight onto the front of the card. And then I pop a couple of foam squares on the back of the circle. These foam squares I bought in the pound shop, and I will never do that again. Ever, ever, ever. And here now, sorry, I'm using glossy accents just to fix on one of the little satin bows from the kit. And again, this card I'm leaving sentiment free so that I am able to add one when I know what I want to do with the card, or just not have one at all. Let it be just a just because card. So here's card 6, and I'm using one of the purple bases here. And the same as I always do, I'm simply holding the paper up, seeing where I want to cut, and then using my T-square ruler to do the cuts. I've then used another circle from that same circle die set, and I'm cutting a piece of the lace to fit over the top. So it has to be larger than the circle but smaller than the patterned paper. And run around the edge of the circle with double-sided tape so that I can lay the lace in. Now, the sequin mix that comes with the kit is the Peacock Pride. Obviously it's one of my favourites because I put it together, but it has got some smaller pieces in it. So for this, you will need to fish those pieces out, or you can do what I did, and I didn't leave this in, so I'm telling you, and that is to pour the sequin mix over the lace, and it will all act like a sieve all the ones that won't fall through it will stay on top of it, and they're the ones you want to use in your shaker mix if you're going to do this. So here, much the same as the last shaker, I've folded some foam tape and snipped it so that it will all fit, and then making sure that there is no gaps. I then go around the rest of the card front with the same width, height I should say, rather than width, the same height foam, just to support the rest of the card front. And then here are some of the sequins that I've already sort of had a little double check through, and I'd pull out all of the blue ones because with the colours of this card I didn't want there to be blue. Use the anti-static powder tool on just along the inside of those foam pieces to make sure that the sequins don't stick, and then I peel off all of the ones that are around the shaker because I want to use a piece of pattern paper on the back rather than the card blank, and then take off all of the rest and then of the release papers, and then there we go. So now onto the sentiment. This is the same backing paper as I used inside the shaker, and I just used my Misty to stamp with the Versamark "Nevertheless She Persisted," and I've used the embossing powder from the kit as well, and I trim the sentiment down, and I have a little bit of a play around. I like to leave my sentiments larger rather than smaller until I know exactly where I want them, and if I want them to be on a banner or a fishtail or you know, layered up somehow. But anyway, so that's all completed, trimmed all down, and then I've just popped that onto a piece of the pale green specialty cardstock, and using my scissors, because this is such a small piece I didn't need to get the trimmer out. I just trimmed around that to give it a little border, just to separate it slightly from the backing paper. And then I use a peel off to run around the edge of the circle. Now, these peel offs are obviously straight, but they are pliable, but they do need to have a really good firm press to make sure that they stay in place. And then I pop some foam squares on the back of the sentiment panel, and then pop that in the centre at the bottom of the card. And that's the end of that one. Thanks for sticking with me, guys, because you know this is an endurance here. And now we're on to card 7. So I'm using the dark green card base, and I've picked a piece of patterned paper, and as ever I'm marking with a pencil and then cutting using my T-square ruler. And here I'm using some just double-sided sellotape to stick the patterned paper onto the card front. And you may have noticed that whenever I'm measuring the paper out, I always measure onto the back side of it so that I don't leave pencil marks or anything on the front. And here I've got a piece of the green cardstock. This isn't the specialty, and I've treated it with the anti-static powder tool, and I'm in the Versamark stamping the flower and using the embossing powder from the kit, and I heat set that, and then I stamp the flower again onto a post-it note, making sure that there's plenty of sticky in the way. And here I've popped the little mask over the top of the embossed flower, and then I place the wreath over the top where I would like the flower to sit. Stamp that with the Versamark. Thankfully the mask peeled off for me. And then I used the same embossing powder. You could use a different embossing powder obviously for this, but I did have a plan in mind, so I heat set that as well. And then the sentiment, "Nevertheless She Persisted," and you're seeing a bit of a sneak here of something else, which was a bit naughty of me really, but there we go. So there's a purple embossing powder and I fussy cut around the edge of the wreath there, and this was when I discovered that my Spectrum Noir Sparkle pen had rolled on the floor and I hadn't used it for any of my cards, so here it is being introduced. You unscrew it, take the yellow piece out, and then you squeeze. It does say press, you give it a good press, and then you can see the product sort of filling into the chamber. And then I covered this whole card front. I think it was to overcompensate for the fact that I'd ignored it for the first few cards. And then I run some of the glittery peel-offs just around the edge to create another little border. And as you can see here, I used all my little scrappy bits, and as long as you butt them up nicely, no one will ever know. So it do always save all the little bits and pieces that are left over. And here I'm using, this is the widest of the 3 strips, and I'm using the lines on my grid mat to make sure that they are straight, and I put 3 quite close together in the centre of the card. Put some foam squares behind my sentiment and wreath panel, I suppose, and then using the tweezers so that my big fat fingers are out of the way, I pop that onto the card front. I do go in then with the Spectrum Noir sparkle pen, and I go on the leaves and in the wreath, and then using the Nuvo drops, I put a diddy drop right in the centre of the flower. And that is the end of that card. It's very sparkly, you can't sadly see that. And now we're on to card 8. Now these are the chalk stickers, and this is the chalk pen that I recommended as an add-on. Now I am not a letterer, you know, I'm no good at lettering unfortunately, but I just thought I'd give it a little go for this. And to be honest, the hearts I found easier to draw just a little V when it's such a thick pen. And then I set that off to one side to dry, and here I'm using some double-sided tape on a off-cut of patterns paper. I think also there was so much pattern paper here to choose from, I didn't know where to start, so sort of once I'd started a piece, then I thought, oh, I'll carry on using that one. So there is a few here that overlap with the same pattern papers. But anyway, so this was a piece that was left from the shaker card with the lace, and I've just attached that off to one side, and I've run a couple of peel-offs, one on each side, and then another narrow one to the right as well, just to add a little bit of sparkle on the front. And here you see me using double-sided tape on the back of the circle. Now this was the circle that was left from the shaker card when I cut the front out. So I'm using all my scraps here, and all I'm doing is using that silver thread tinsel, I'm not really sure what you'd call it, and I just sort of lay it into the sellotape, and then using foam squares I end up popping that up. But here I'm using some of the silver specialty card, and again I offset that, I don't put that quite in the middle, and I peel only the ends of the double-sided tape up to make sure that I've got it in the right place, and then when I'm happy with it I will pull those tails out and give it a good firm press down. And here I'm just running another of those peel-offs on just to tie it all in. Keep that little wasty bit, nothing of this is waste. And then having stuck the sticker into the centre of that circle, I then take the release papers off, and I use 3 of the little satin roses here, and I use glossy accents on the back of them, and then once they're all in position I poke the precision nib in between the 3 of them, and then squirt some more glue in there, because you can never have too much glue when it comes to big flowers on the front of your cards. Okay, so now we're on to the next card. Now, this one is ever such a simple card, but I'm just doing my usual. I'm trimming down a piece of the specialty cardstock so that it is very slightly smaller than the card base, and then using some more of this, I want to say chunky rain paper, that's what it makes me think of, chunky rain. And I've cut some pieces of the wider ribbon here, and I use double-sided sellotape on the reverse of the card panel, and using my grid mat, lining it up to make sure they're all straight, and then I'm just folding the ends over and laying them into the tape. So it, you know, this is a great saver because you're not wasting lots on the back, but at the front it still looks as though it's been wrapped like a present. Using some foam squares, I mount it up onto the specialty cardstock. Hold it up to make sure that it's doing what I want it to do, and then double-sided tape onto the back of the purple. I do that the whole way through making cards. I don't plan my cards ahead of time really. They sort of evolve as I'm making them. So it's not I do have to edit these videos quite heavily, and so there's a lot of holding up, a lot of holding different products up, so I do let it slip sometime and they stay in. I'm leaving in here how I attach the card bases when it's really important that it's the right width all the way around. Now this is an example of me changing my mind about what I want the card to look like after I've already stuck things down. It does look painful, but it does work out in the end, thankfully. Sometimes it doesn't always work out. However, yeah, on this occasion I lucked out. And I decided to stamp my sentiment on the inside of the card for this one, and I just wanted to also show that the green embossing powder, whilst it looks dark, it does still work on the darker cardstock because it's got that nice shine to it. And here's card 10. Now, card 10 didn't actually exactly go the way that I wanted it to. It was, because it was one of the ones that I'd thought about actually when I put this kit together. But here it is. This is some of the specialty cardstock that feels like canvas, using double-sided tape to attach that onto the front of the card. And then I'm just sort of dry fitting, I believe it's called, laying everything out without sticking it down to make sure that everything goes where I want it to go. And then I'm just popping double-sided tape onto the back of all of the elements. Now these butterflies on the back have got a shine. Now you could do it the other way around if you wanted to have the shiny side up. I went with this way so that I could put Spectrum Noir sparkle all over the canvas, which unfortunately I didn't do in under the camera, so you'll have to just check the pictures at the end. And here I've just picked out some of the dark grey sequins from the shaker mix. Oh, excuse my head. And then I just used the glossy accents and a sticky pencil to attach those all down onto the front of the card. I then use the twine to create a little bow, and then that gets attached right in the centre at the front of the envelope, again with glossy accents. And there you have the card, without the Spectrum Noir, I'm afraid. Card 11, a bit of a bonus card. I'm using my Prisma colouring pencils. Again, these will all be listed. Sorry, I had to zoom in a bit there because I realised that you probably wouldn't be able to see a thing, and I've super sped this up. Again, there is no special tactic to how I'm colouring these at all. I'm literally just laying the colour within the lines, and in some cases outside of the lines as well. And again, I picked colours to match in with the patterned paper I wanted to use, and using my pencil, mark and then trim. And then I used that same circular die that I'd used previously. Now this is an example of where the piece of Mint's specialty cardstock wasn't big enough for what I wanted it to do, so I cut the strip the width that I wanted it to be, and then I cut it in half, and I used my T-square ruler lined up on the card base to make sure that I laid it straight. And I made sure that that snip that I made in the middle of the piece of cardstock would be hidden underneath the patterned paper, so you wouldn't know that that isn't one continuous piece. And here I'm doing the fold the ribbon over the paper trick again, using double-sided tape at the top and at the bottom. And using the grid mat, I'm just making sure that everything's lined up. If you're still here, I'm terribly impressed. This is, you know, you've done very well indeed. But folding the ribbon over on both ends, and then I attach just some tape over the top of those just to make sure that they are stuck down and not going to go anywhere. And now using some foam squares, I mount that panel up. This week is actually incredibly exciting. It's the Love From Lizi's first birthday, and we've got a video hop coming on the 2nd of September at 6 PM British summertime, and there is an enormous giveaway. The prizes in this giveaway are going to be phenomenal. Anyway, here's what's left of the kit. So you've got the chameleon pen, which I didn't actually get to use, the stamp set, the sparkle pen, loads and loads of papers, specialty cardstock. I mean, I think there's something like 12 sheets of 8x8 paper I didn't even touch. Still got stickers, envelopes, sequins, bows, Nuvo. Yeah, this, you could make another 30 cards out of this kit, I think. So these are all the additional products that I use. So there's a few Copics, some Miri, acetate, the Prismas. Then there's like the general tools that you'd use in card making. I did also obviously use my Sizzix Big Shot and my Misty tool, and some trimmers that I didn't put into this. And and they're the 2 dies I used. I did try to keep everything to an absolute minimum beyond the kit. So yes, I will have a full list. And there's the 12th card, which I didn't actually get videoed, I'm afraid, but it's a very simple and straightforward one. And so here are all the still shots now, and again, they will all be over on the blog post for you to enjoy. But I must say that I'm really excited for the video hop coming next week. I've got some really talented crafters joining me, and I can't wait to see who's going to win all of the giveaways. Do take care and check back shortly to see what's going on with the birthday celebrations. Thanks ever so much for sticking with me, and until next time, lots and lots of love and happy paper crafting. Thanks guys, bye!